Hello, everyone. I am back. I am going to be here tonight by myself because I'm going to discuss something that I did last. To make a long story short, I've been doing this for quite a while, but I'm also not the expert on this, so I'm going to reference a couple sources. First source is going to be Tactical Wisdom by Joe Dolio, Baseline Training Manual. I think I may have read this already, but I've got to highlight it and I got to check my notes. It's about the area study. Second book is going to be the Area Intelligence Handbook by Mike Shelby. Really, really good book. It is very in-depth. I think it may be too in-depth for the average person, but if you really want to know intelligence stuff, I highly recommend the book. I think Joe does a good synopsis for what it is, and I'm going to caveat some stuff in here that may change the way both books are perceived, but let me preface this that I'm going to position both of these conversations. One is a partisan fighter for those who are unfortunately in dire straits somewhere else, and for the prepper in the United States. Both options are directly going to be almost identical. The only difference really is going to be how you look at certain things, like, is this a target or is this something I need to defend? Is this a problem? Or is this a positive thing? So let's start with Joe's book. I think this is a really good brief synopsis. The first step to increase awareness is to conduct an area study. Actually, you'll need to conduct several area studies, one for every area that you frequent. I think it's a highly good point that a lot of people miss. We think, oh, we need to do an area study for a house. We need to do it for maybe our home away from home, but you also should do it for where you work. Some of us are working 30, 40 minutes away. Power outage, something else happens like Spain. Maybe you can drive home. Maybe you can't. And that's something to think about. I think the power outage in Spain, regardless of what caused it, was an eye-opener for that region, including part of France, that didn't stay down for very long, but they even closed down the cell phones. Normally our systems stay up for a lot of disasters, or they're up very quickly, and I don't think was not the case there too, but it's something to think about. He goes on, he says, first begin with your immediate area. Your neighborhood is your innermost circle of defense, and you will work outwards from there. Make a sketch of your house, show all your rooms, your doors, your windows, all your details. Now, I'm adding some of this stuff into the conversation here on the podcast because I did an area study with maps last night, and I pulled up websites, and we used a city in Arkansas because I was talking to some Arkansas, Missouri boys, and we picked a random city called Pea Ridge. And when we went there, we looked through all of the websites and other things. But I think Joe is very accurate, and even the areas, Mike has the same kind of concept in his thing. You start local, look at your bushes, look at your shrubs and everything like that. And I think it's very important. Some of us do that more often than not, and I feel that I don't tell people about that. I sure as hell didn't last night, and I kind of feel bad that I didn't. But it's something to think about. Where are the shrubs? Where are the bushes? Where are the easy access areas? I'm currently in an area where homeless people pass through more than I would like. And it's not because they're homeless. I don't really care that you're homeless, but unfortunately they bring more homeless, and there's a huge drug epidemic in this area, which I hope to be out of sooner than later. So now we sketch out our house, we sketch out the shrubs, maybe we sketch out the fences. Where can we see? Get on Google Earth, get on Google Maps, look in your area. Start expanding that map out. Now there's various ways to get maps. I do not know if this is in Dolio's book, but most area study people tell you to go get maps from your local town hall. That used to be the case. That used to be very easily done. It is no longer the case. And that's kind of a pain in the butt. If we really get down to brass tacks, printing out maps and things like that and getting GIS maps is a pain in the ass. The other reason why you want maps is if you actually have to operate in an area or something like that, you need to make sure your protractors that you've bought, which may be 1 in 24,000 or 1 in 25,000, are equivalent to the actual items that you have to navigate with. Protractors are phenomenal, and add that with a compass, do grid coordinates, stuff like that. Now, there's various maps. I'm not going to go into details on that. That's honestly a better conversation for those who actually do navigation with maps. For the purposes of an area study, you don't need these. I recommend you get them. But sometimes you need a closer map. Say you live in a city, which I've lived in cities and I've lived out in the rural nowhere. You may have a small town of a couple hundred people, and it's very easy to map out. You may have woods around there, or ridge lines, or creeks and streams. You may be in a city with sectioned off subdivisions with walls, or maybe terrain features. If you go out to Arkansas and Little Rock area, there is a strip mall right along a main road. If you look up about 150 feet, 100 feet, there is a whole apartment complex right above there. There's almost no way to climb up and down that thing safely. There's probably one or two paths somebody could figure out, but it's right on the edge and there's no way to get up and down. It is a vantage point for those who live up there. It is an obstacle if you had to get up there, and you need to know these things. The other thing about area studies, I will say, when you're looking past your particular property you're on, a lot of people don't go out into the woods near their houses. They don't walk around. As kids, we used to do that, and I highly recommend you do that now. Maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you don't know the neighbors. It's time to go out and talk to your neighbors. This is another thing that a lot of people don't do, is they don't talk to their neighbors. They don't know who they are. I know the Karen where she lives. I know the bodybuilder who's a phenomenally nice dude. I know the people down the road who's a truck driver, and he's a very good guy, but he's in and out, and I watch his area. When he's not here, I kind of peek around and make sure his stuff's safe. I don't have his number, but I would call the cops if I need to on that. That said, think of all of an area study as kind of an onion. You start out at the core of the onion, cut an onion in half, you look down, you've got those rings or a tree trunk. You need to build your area study in that way. You build out. And as you do that, you might make a sketch of your house showing all your rooms, your windows, all that stuff. And then you might sketch your yard, including every feature. Once you've done this, analyze your sketches, both the house and the yard, and list 3 or 4 most likely avenues of approach, or ways in which someone could approach and attack your house. I think there's a good dude out there that shows, he does ASP, and he talks about areas where you can get ambushed and attacked, and most of those are between your car and your house. If you watch videos from South Africa, they'll have gates that open, the car comes in, and right behind it, the bad guys come in and take advantage of them. Those thresholds, those positional changes are very important, and you need to know those, and some people just don't. I'm not knocking you guys. Obviously, some of you are new. Some of you older hats that have been around the block a few times, you really should have thought of this before now. And maybe a lot of you have, which is kind of nice. So as we spread out and you get to know your neighbors, get to know your region, start walking those common grounds. Maybe walk along the ditch. And one of the things that you'll learn from brush beater or Dolio or anything like that, when you're out doing this stuff, you don't have to dress up in tactical gear. You don't have to go running around. Have a reason to be out in a weird spot. Make a good excuse. Hey, I'm looking for a cat. Somebody said their cat was missing, their dog was missing. Or I saw an animal run by and I'm just trying to find their footprints. Whatever it is. It may be something specific to your area. You're not going to be like, oh, I saw a bear in a city, but you may have seen a fox and I kind of want to know where it's going. The reason why I bring that up is I have an article called Run Silent, Run Deep, the insurgency primer to submerging under your enemy. It's a little older. It's a 2023 article. If you go through that, the reason why I bring this up is twofold. One is I kind of did an area study in its own variation on here, and part of the area study was based off Dodge City. I happened to be out in that area, and I had a unique chance to write up the area. It's not a place I'd tell you to go visit for beyond a day, but I also wanted to introduce everyone to Sweat MC. Now, I know it's brought up a lot by brush beater and other training people, and that's sewer, water, electricity, access, transport, medical, and communications. There's also another one called Sweat IR. That's more of a big army version, and that's sewer, water, electricity, academia, which is different than access, trash, infrastructure, and reconnaissance. And I think both of these are kind of a merger. There's another one out there, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But they do base what you need to be looking at as you expand past your area. Where are you getting your water from? Where can you get water from? So we were looking at Pea Ridge, Arkansas. We picked a random house in an area, and I started looking at the map, and I'm like, hey, there's a pond. It's on a person's property. Maybe go get to know that person. That's probably your closest fresh water that you can obtain. And we started looking at creeks in that area. When you see that creek, you're like, oh, this is a nice area. There's water running through it. We could go get water there and boil it. Unfortunately, as you expand in your view of your small town to a bigger area on out, you might notice in Pea Ridge, there's a small little facility up there that's actually a sewage treatment plant. It is in a depression. It is along the creek, and it's cleaning all that raw sewage and turning it into theoretically drinkable water in the river. And I bet there's an outpour into that river. Now, right now you're probably fine. You could probably go drink that water with relatively safety with a filter. Fast forward, power's been out for 2 weeks. Where's the sewage going? Is it all draining down out of the higher elevation of Pea Ridge to there naturally? And is it overflowing and flowing into the stream? And we see this in foreign countries. India is one of those major places that I can think of that you don't want to touch the water. Most of the Middle East is very similar in that nature. Europe's actually pretty clean in a lot of places. I don't know every place in Europe, but you get my point. Same thing comes down when you look at regions of the United States. Arkansas River is a big thoroughfare for Arkansas, but it goes up through Oklahoma. It goes into Kansas. It goes to Dodge City. And if you look at the map that I have, you'll see that Dodge City. You'll see that little river, dry riverbed right through the center of the city. Now, I can tell you out there, there's a shot up car, there's a shot up boat in a big hole and a lot of lead in there. I don't think it's going to get down to us in Arkansas or past there, but it is one of those things to know about. As you're walking around, as you're looking around, maybe you got on Google Earth, you see some concrete. Maybe it's near a dry riverbed. Maybe it's on a river and it looks like an overflow or outflow. You might see rocks, boulders, and stuff like that. There may be access to your water runoff that goes under the city or town you're in that may give you movement or give a bad person movement into your city unseen. And we talk about this because if you look at Ukraine right now, Russia did a push through a gas pipeline that was empty. There's reports that they didn't do well with it. They did effective. People died in there from gases, etc. And there's a lot of danger with underground stuff. Dodge City was interesting because the website at the time showed every manhole cover to every sewer and every water runoff in the city. I believe it also showed where the water was being transmitted, fresh water through the city too. Some of your cities have this information, some of the cities don't. And that's something you want to look at. Other thing I will tell you is your local city's website most likely has GIS data on it. Now, this could be anything from fantastically detailed resources that tell you how thick your roads are to almost nothing at all. Depends on how much the city has been working and how faithful your politicians and servants of the township have produced information and thought it wise to put on there. As you progress out from your center area, you're going to pick up, where are my hospitals? Where are my fire departments? Where are my police stations? You may not have that. Maybe you have to look at a communitycrimemap.com and find it. Maybe it's neighborhoodscout.com. There's a couple websites out there for people to shopping around to see what the crime in an area is and things like that. I wish I had used that a long time ago when I was shopping for homes. But this is important to you. And there's something else you need to think about. Where are your safe spots? Are there churches there? In Pea Ridge, there's a nice church. Right near the church is a food distribution site. Looks probably, from the looks of it, as a place for homeless people to come get food or maybe just the poor. That's important things to know if things start unraveling. The other thing you want to know is, where are your friends? Do you have friends in town? Where are their addresses? Now, as you mark this stuff, map this stuff out, GIS is able to be downloaded, and you can download a lot of information from a lot of GIS sites. Now, I'm not sure what the best software is right now. I haven't played with it for a while, but there's ArcGIS Online that you can look at. There's Spatial Without Compromise, QGIS.org. There's also some other things like, I think there's fulcrumapp.com. I don't know the best software out there for this. So you might have to do some research, and they are going to try to charge you. I know ArcGIS is not very affordable, and some people don't want to run pirated software, which I totally agree with. I don't think you should, but sometimes when you're working in the field, it makes sense to spend money on it. When you're not and you're doing what we're doing, it isn't. I believe QGIS is free, or there's a way to get it for free for students and not using it for other stuff. There's also, I think, another piece of software called FOSS4G, and I think that might also be something that is viable still. Google Earth has an engine as well that you can use. Now, here's my caveat for all this. Once you get this stuff set up, you need to print it out and keep it in a binder. Nick Meacher has a great disaster program book, and he goes over everything from writing down the names and relationships of people close to you, their coordinates and UTMs, their phone numbers, their work locations, and maybe their call signs so you know who it is. Maybe you're not really contacted with them, but you're like, oh, I've got this guy's number handy, or I got his call sign handy. And maybe it's one of those times that you need his information or his expertise. He might be a mechanic and you've got a generator that's down. He also talks about getting hospitals, urgent cares, pharmacies, veterinaries. Big thing to know about, and a lot of people skip on doing area studies. But these are important places to know where there's actually medical supplies and medical help. And he also talks about utilities like power, gas, water, sewer, trash, even Wi-Fi. Write all that stuff down. That helps you in event of a normal disaster, or you've got to go out of town, or you're sick and your wife needs to know the information. He says put the account numbers and stuff like that. But he's got a good book. It's about $24, but it's worth it. And he talks about post office, food banks, Red Cross, you name it, all the churches. Write your churches down. Write the churches you don't go down, because maybe your church is in the disaster area. Continuing on with this, I'm going to kind of give you a brief synopsis of what Mark Shelby's Area Intelligence Handbook is. Again, this is probably very deep. He talks about the introduction and intelligence area study overview, which I think is very good. Defines the operational environment, which is basically where am I doing my area study. And then a threat environment, which is also very important. And this is something you can find on most city websites. You can pull up where the crime is. You can also go to most police departments and be like, hey, I need to know if there's any gangs around. What are the gang signs? I'm trying to know this. I want to tell my church this. I may have had this conversation before about it with you guys on the subject of other things, but it's something to do. Now, I had a conversation with Rabbit today, and I think it was very spot on. We were talking about this and me doing this, and we came to a conclusion, maybe we need to work on these projects as a community, but have, instead of an intel guy, say your intelligence guy, you've got a guy who knows how to fix guns, you've got a engineer, you've got a medical person, and then, all those certain facets of your community that you want to make sure you got covered. Well, intelligence is very hard and it's time consuming. Maybe it's good to have your specific people go look for this information. That helps them understand the area study and in future know stuff. So maybe get the medic to find out where all the pharmacies are, where all the doctors are, where all that stuff is, and what kind of doctors they are. The more detail you can get, and you can build these area studies over time, which I highly recommend. Also recommended by both Dolio and Mike Shelby is to do this on a regular basis because things do change. So there's that. Now, the other thing you want to check is your physical terrain. As you're zooming out, terrain changes. Now, there's a lot of other things that you're going to miss. If you go on P Ridge and you pick an area and you drop your little human on Google Maps onto a road, you can look out and you can see around, you can see where there's fences and all this other stuff. You can see the micro terrain that is not on the maps. When you hit the terrain feature on the maps, it disappears. I will say this, I love to pop up the satellite images first, look in the area. That will tell you certain things. You can see where the treetops are. You can see if there's a ridge of treetops. You can also sometimes see where there's water that's not marked on the map. Sometimes it's a ditch that doesn't have water all the time, but there may be runoff, and it may be a barrier to vehicles that you can't easily see on a map, zoomed in or otherwise. I also recommend that you kind of cycle through times on Google Maps. They like to put up the summertime when everything is lush and green, but in the fall and the winter, all of that tree top leaves fall down. You have bare trees in a lot of areas, and you can see a lot more. You can see things that aren't there. There's also I think Doppler radar or something like that that is out there, and people use specific mapping technology. You can find where there's old homesteads that no longer exist, but maybe that's something for you to look for. Maybe you're near a forest that used to have homes from the 1800s. Maybe there's still a well out there. Maybe it's a place to go for a small community that's running away from bandits or otherwise. And that moves us on to Mark Shelby. He goes into security, safety, and defense. He also talks about economics and finances. And this isn't just your personal economics and finances. This is the city's economics and finances. Mark Shelby's book is probably more of an intel book than I would say Joe's is. Joe is more based on a set of topics that are spread out. And I know him personally, and the man is smart, and I'm sure he's gone through all this over and over again. I think Shelby's book is a little bit more verbose. He also goes into where to find named area of interests. He gives you a lot more of the nomenclature for intelligence that you don't see in Joe's book, who's giving a common man the information needed. And I think that is sufficient. So if you want to buy just one book, I'm going to tell you Tactical Wisdom, TW01. It's a couple pages in there, and you can get that information right out of the book and be sufficiently set. Put a couple heads together, you'll do even better. That said, when you're looking at Mark Shelby's book, he talks about human terrain. Like, he'll bring up stuff where M21 is an organization founded in 2020 by Wilbur Ferguson. M21 has chapters throughout the country, including Mayberry and his dedicated armed revolution. Well, I did an article on armed revolutionaries. I also pointed out straight up that these guys do not talk about the 4 gun safety rules, but are cloaked in, oh, we're a gun safety advocate. And that should key you off real fast what their true intent is. That said, I think a lot of people who are in the gun sphere or very armed sometimes make groups, and they don't talk about the 4 basic safety principles, but if you meet them, that's the first thing they talk about. So that isn't always the case. Be careful. Don't judge everything, but know your human terrain as well. Where are your gangs? Where are the areas that your cops are like, hey, this is a bad area. Hey, this is a drug area. And talk to your police. Get to know them. Get to know your local police. If you don't know your local police, they're not going to know you. If they know you came in, you're like, hey, I'm doing something for the church. We're trying to get some information. Just know safe areas. We might be going out to do food drives for the homeless or whatever else. Where is it safe for us to go? Where is it not? Where should we stay away from? I think one of my favorite parts out of here on Mark Shelby's book, he's in page 143. He says, how many individuals live in the AO? How many individuals live in the area of interest? Identifying neighbors who live in that area. And he even goes into race, ethnicity, political affiliation, ideology, religion, cultural values, social economic status, education attainment, dependence of public welfare and government aid, which may be very important for you. Is your town very welfare heavy driven? Does that mean that when things go sideways and you're the only one who's prepped for 2 weeks of food, they're going to come knocking on your door? The financial, economics, poverty, he's got inequality on here, crime, and do realize the people who are talking about inequality and stuff like that in our sphere are not talking about the liberal words of that. There is inequality. There are people that are not going to be treated equal. You could have Muslims who treat the Jewish neighbors very poorly, or vice versa. That doesn't always mean it's going to affect you, but it's something to know and recognize. We'll stick in reality. be careful of hotbed words that have been warped to make political gains. So we also have ethical and racial strife. And he goes on. He's got a lot of stuff in here. I don't want to give away his whole book. I haven't asked him if I can read it out to you guys. So just remember that in the process. He's got multiple steps. He's got tasks like evaluate the AI for significant human terrain features and identify their positive and negative effects. Identify individuals or groups to develop a local network centered on community security and emergency preparedness. Task 3, if applicable, add features to a map overlay for your area study. And this is the big thing. When you print these things out, when I started this, I got a whole bunch of topographic maps from, I want to say it was like USGS facility I actually drove to. And you used to be able to go to most hiking stores and pick up maps of your area. No longer is that the case. You can go online, you can get them printed out. I've also seen a lot of people just print out maps via Kinko's and places like that do printing, and they'll print out big poster size things. I took the USGS maps, I put them up on a wall, I marked it all out, and I had a community of guys that we were working with, and we looked at everything. But we were also looking at everything from where's the abandoned buildings, where are the factories, where's the industry, how far are the police away from where we are, how much time does it usually take somebody to travel that way? And that's something now on Google Maps, you can pick and say, if I travel from this point to this other point on a standard time, driving speed, how many minutes can I go? I can set it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. And that gives us all that information now that wasn't there before. So I'm not going to go too long into this. I think this is a good topic starter. I may bring in some of the guys, possibly if they want to get on here and talk about this stuff. Just realize that all this information, where's your power coming from? Is it hydro? Is it a coal plant? Things like that. What will affect those things? Is there a industry upstream of you that you need to be worried about? Is there farmland right near you that pumps out a lot of pesticides in your creek, and your creek is not safe to drink, and you better be on well water? Things like that become very important, and I think a lot of people take that for granted because they see a clear water area, fish are alive, but the moment things go, it could get really bad for you, or people will stop caring, and they'll do whatever the hell they want, including poop in the water, clean, bathe, everything else. So keep that in mind. I think Dolio does a really good job of this in his book. I will be reading it if I haven't already read it before. And if I have, go look it up. He starts on page 16. But for now, I'm going to let that kind of end this right now and try to get this out. Hope you guys are having a great time. I'm going to probably have some guys this weekend get on here so you don't have to listen to my voice the whole time. And you can listen to people like maybe Liquid Rabbit, might try to get Mando on. I'm going to try to harass X. It's all dependent on schedules, and obviously summer's coming. A lot of people are actually out shooting. If you follow Wisco Mando on X, you'll see he's participating in competitions and is enjoying his life to his fullest right now. I highly recommend you guys are doing that. The Arkansas boys that I talked to, they're getting ready to probably go and do some hikes and just be more physically fit, talk about their communities. They're kind of spread out. They're not all in one town, which is kind of nice, and I got to get to know them that way. We're also getting to know them because they're coming to the SIGINT class that's coming up in Arkansas at DARC. I don't know if that's filled yet, but if you're in that area, please go. One of my buddies is going too, and they are a font of knowledge there. Obviously, you guys know Brushbeater because if you know me, you know him. And there'll be other people at that thing that have varied information. Also, I am talking to 2 people to get them to talk about homesteading. I know shit about homesteading, so we'll have that hopefully. I'm going to try to shoot for within a month. So, you guys have a great time. I think I've talked enough. Have a good night.